During college, I worked at the university's annual haunted house attraction. It was a huge hit, especially on Halloween night, which was also its last open night each year. The attraction was held in an old, abandoned dorm that hadn't been used in years. Rumor had it that this place was actually haunted, but I never gave it much thought. It was probably just another campus legend. Halloween night was packed. Students flooded in, eager to get their scare fix. We stayed open until midnight, and as one of the staff, my job was to do a final walkthrough once the last group went through, making sure that no one got lost or was still lingering inside. Easy enough. I grabbed my flashlight and started the walkthrough, going room by room. The place was creepy for sure, but without actors and crowds, it was just an empty building filled with fake cobwebs and plastic skeletons. I didn't scare easily, and I knew the layout well enough to keep moving without a second thought. As I made my way through the halls, I eventually reached one of the last rooms in the attraction, the maze. This room was a claustrophobic labyrinth of mannequins twisted into different poses. There were no actors here. The stillness meant to unnerve people on its own. I always thought it was the creepiest room, but only because of how lifeless the mannequins looked. They didn't even need to move to make people feel uneasy. I started navigating through, my flashlight flicking across the rows of plastic bodies. As I stepped deeper into the maze, I heard a noise behind me. I stopped, turned, and shone my light. Nothing. It was probably just the building settling. This place was ancient after all. I shook off the brief spike of adrenaline and kept walking, my footsteps echoing in the eerie silence. As I took another step forward, something caught my eye. One of the mannequins, just a head with no eyes, no mouth, nothing, seemed to have moved. It was positioned further into the path than I thought it had been a second ago. At least, that's what I thought. Was my mind playing tricks on me? I was frozen, just staring at it. The head was angled directly at me, blank and featureless, but it still felt like it was looking at me. My skin prickled and my heart sped up, but I tried to shrug it off. I was tired, that was all. It had to be my mind that was just playing tricks on me. I slowly moved past it, not daring to take my eyes off the thing. And when I was safely beyond it, I quickened my pace. The exit wasn't far now. I could see the door at the end of the room. Then, a loud crash echoed behind me, making me jump. I spun around, flashlight shaking in my hand. I scanned the area, but nothing seemed out of place. But I'd had enough. I just wanted to get out of there. I turned to head for the door, and my heart stopped. Every single mannequin that had been standing in front of me was now facing directly at me. All of them. I didn't have time to process it. It had to be a prank, right? Someone messing with me? But I wasn't sticking around to find out. I sped up, practically running for the door, refusing to look up at the mannequins again. When I finally reached the door, I flung it open and stepped through. For a brief moment, I hesitated. I turned back, my flashlight casting one last beam into the room. Every mannequin was back in its original position, except one. The one I had passed earlier was now standing just a few feet from the door, and it was staring directly at me. Then, slowly, its head moved. I slammed the door and ran out of that building, my heart pounding in my chest. That night stayed with me, and even now, I can't shake the feeling that something was in that old dorm and it had been watching me, waiting. It's safe to say that I never went back to that place again. When I was in high school, I convinced my parents to let me have a few friends over for Halloween. Claire, Lisa, and Izzy and I had the whole basement to ourselves, fully finished with a mini kitchen and even a half bath. It was the perfect setup for a spooky sleepover. We spent the earlier part of the night trick-or-treating, and then we headed back to my house, dumped our candy, and settled in for a movie. Around 10, my mom came downstairs to tell us that she was heading to bed. She reminded us to keep the noise down, and then went back upstairs. By midnight, we were wired, probably from all the sugar, and looking for something else to do. That's when Claire brought up Bloody Mary. Apparently, someone at school had done it and claimed they actually saw her. I'd never heard of the game, so Claire explained it to me. She said you have to go to the bathroom, turn off the lights, and stare into the mirror. You then have to say Bloody Mary 3 times, and then you can see her in the mirror. I laughed, saying there was no way that was real. Claire shrugged her shoulders. Izzy then shouted that we should all try it. Claire said if we do, we need to take turns and go in alone. The bathroom was the perfect place for this game. A single mirror hanging over the sink, and it was just big enough to make you feel uncomfortable if you stared at it for too long. I wasn't scared though, it was just a stupid game. Izzy went first. She lit a candle, walked into the bathroom, and closed the door. The three of us pressed our ears against it, listening to her whisper, "Bloody Mary, Bloody Mary, Bloody Mary." A few seconds of silence followed before the door creaked open and Izzy came out. She laughed and pretended to be a ghost. We laughed, shaking our heads. Next was Lisa's turn. Same routine. 3 whispers of Bloody Mary, a brief silence, and then she came out, rolling her eyes, talking about how stupid this was. Claire went in after her, but even she came out of the bathroom with nothing to report. They then all looked at me. It was my turn. I walked towards the bathroom, rolling my eyes as Claire handed me the candle. Just as I was about to close the door, Claire stopped me. She said she realized she forgot that there was something else that we were supposed to do. We looked at her with wide eyes. She said you have to take a knife into the bathroom with you, and that's probably why it wasn't working. It seemed weird, but I shrugged. Claire and I went into the mini kitchen, grabbed a knife from one of the drawers, and walked back towards the bathroom. When I got inside, I looked at Claire, who was smiling, and gave me a thumbs up. I closed the door and placed the knife on the sink next to the candle, the flickering light casting long shadows across the wall. I stared into the mirror, feeling silly. While I knew nothing was going to happen, I would be lying if I said I wasn't a little scared. I took a deep breath, then said the words, "Bloody Mary, Bloody Mary, Bloody Mary." The room went silent. For a few seconds, nothing happened. Just the candle's soft glow and my own reflection staring back at me. Then I saw it. Movement in the corner of the mirror. I squinted. Was that a face? My heart skipped a beat as I stepped back. I turned around quickly, but before I could register what was happening, Izzy popped out from behind the door, laughing. I screamed and the others burst into the bathroom, howling with laughter. They'd tricked me. Izzy had snuck in before I even entered, crouching behind the door. That's why Claire wanted me to go get a knife. I shouted at them, telling them that it wasn't funny. I could feel my face flush with embarrassment. They were still laughing when suddenly, they all stopped. The room went dead quiet. I asked them what was wrong, but none of them answered. They just stood there looking at me with pure horror on their faces. Then Claire slowly lifted her hand, pointing just behind me. Izzy then screamed and ran out of the bathroom. Her scream must have broken Claire and Lisa out of their trance as they followed suit. My heart was pounding, but I didn't understand. What was their deal? I looked around the room. Everything seemed normal, until I turned back to the mirror. At first, I saw only my reflection, but then I noticed something was off. The person staring back at me wasn't me. She looked exactly like me, but her face was twisted into a wide, unnatural smile. My own lips were frozen, trembling. I wasn't smiling. I screamed and bolted out of the bathroom, sprinting up the stairs just as my parents were coming down, confused by all the noise. I yelled that someone was in the bathroom. My dad rushed down, but when he checked, there was no one there. Everything was back to normal. No weird reflection, no eerie presence, just a regular bathroom. My friends refused to come back over after that night, and I never talked about it again. But to this day, I still don't know what I saw in that mirror. Was it Bloody Mary? Or something much worse? It was Halloween night, one of my favorite nights of the year. My husband Ben and our son Josh and I made our way to the town's annual Halloween festival. It was small, but we loved it. Bonfires, rides, a mirror house, hay rides, and, of course, the corn maze. We always saved the maze for last. Something about wandering through the tall, twisted stalks of corn just as the night fell felt perfect for the holiday. After a fun day, we were finally headed to the corn maze. It was around 7:30, just starting to get dark. The air was crisp, filled with the scent of popcorn and firewood. As we reached the entrance, Ben suddenly stopped. He said he had forgot his camera and that he wanted to go back to get it. He told me to go on ahead and he would catch up. I nodded, grabbing Josh's hand and leading him into the maze. I could hear the excited chatter of families behind us as they entered too. The maze wasn't very big. 3 paths that looped around that led back to the entrance. We had done it every year, so I wasn't worried. We walked for a few minutes, passing a couple of families on their way out. Josh seemed excited, pointing at every shadow that moved. Then Josh tugged on my hand. He yelled "Mom" and pointed to one of the walls of corn off to our right. There, hidden behind rows of stalks, there was a narrow opening. I didn't remember this path from the map. It was small, almost as if the corn had bent on its own to create a doorway. Josh's eyes lit up and asked me if we could go that way. I hesitated. Ben hadn't caught up with us yet, and I didn't want him to miss out on the walk. I looked back to see if he was coming, but there was no sign of him. Josh kept tugging on my arm, so I gave in with a sigh. We stepped through the gap, the corn closing in around us. The path was narrow and wound around sharply, but it seemed to go on forever. After a few minutes, I started to feel uneasy. The maze wasn't big enough for a path to go on this long. I slowed down and turned around, trying to remember where we had come from, but that's when my stomach dropped. The path behind us was gone. It was like the corn had swallowed it whole. The way back was completely sealed off. My heart raced, but I forced myself to stay calm for Josh's sake. I didn't think he had realized what was going on yet, as he was still excited and wanting to go further down the path. I pulled out my phone to call Ben, but there was no service. The more we walked, the more it felt like we were going in circles, yet never finding a way out. The maze wasn't that big, but somehow we just couldn't find the exit. The sky had fully darkened now, the only light coming from my phone's dim screen. By this point, Josh could sense something was wrong. He kept asking where his dad was and that he was ready to go home. I told him we were leaving. I tried to sound confident, but inside, panic was creeping in. We'd been walking what felt like ages. The corn seemed endless, and every time I glanced back, the path behind us had disappeared again. It was like the maze was alive, closing in on us. I picked Josh up and started walking faster, then running, hoping to stumble back onto the main trail. The corn stalks slapped against my arms and legs, but no matter how far I ran, there was no way out. The maze seemed to be toying with us, trapping us inside. After what felt like forever, I tripped, falling into the ground and dropping Josh. My face hit the dirt, pain shooting through my cheek. I scrambled up quickly, hearing Josh's cries, but when I looked around, I froze. The corn was gone. We were in an open space, the entrance to the maze. I heard shouting and looked up to see 2 police officers running towards us. They scooped Josh and me up. They asked if I was Diana. I nodded, completely dazed. How did they know my name? What was going on? They hurried us to the parking lot where a crowd had gathered, all staring at me. An EMT checked us over, but I couldn't focus on anything until I saw Ben running towards us. His face was pale, tears streaming down his cheeks as he hugged us both tightly. I asked him what was going on. His response, well, it still haunts me to this day. He said that we never came out of the corn maze, and that the police had been searching for us for almost 48 hours. The crowd of people were members of the community who had come to set up a search party. I stared at him in disbelief. What he was telling me couldn't be possible. I knew we had been in the maze for a while, but 2 whole days? That was impossible. None of this made any sense, and to this day, I don't know what happened in that corn maze. Josh doesn't remember anything, but I'll never forget that feeling of being lost, trapped in something that was far more than just a maze.